During the one day we did have in the Formula One paddock before the Australian Grand Prix was cancelled, we did have a little movement in the Ferrari FIA settlement case. The question about what Ferrari was doing with its power unit package in 2019 and the secret agreements that were struck with the FIA. Mark Hughes, what did we learn on that truncated weekend?
We learned a little bit more. The 7 teams had given some very specific questions to the FIA that they would like answered. The FIA and Chase Carey gave a joint response about their position, which the teams were not fully satisfied with, the depth and the clarity of the answers. And so we're planning to do a further letter, and that was all set to play out as part of the Melbourne Grand Prix weekend. But of course, events rather overtook it. But during that time, we did hear from one of the other team principals that before the FIA could go any further in explaining what the agreement entailed, it required the other party's consent, i.e. Ferrari. So, which makes sense if you have an agreement between two people and one of those parties is then pushed to reveal more. The other party will only naturally say, well, we can't tell you on our own. You'd have to get their agreement too. So that's where we're at.
Well, it was actually in response to my series of questions that Claire Williams, in fact, it was who said that. And she mentioned the thing that the ball's kind of in Ferrari's court. And when I followed up, my question was, well, so does this mean that for the good of Formula One, Ferrari should do this? And Claire did kind of say, well, it's still a joint decision. But I think that's quite significant, isn't it? I mean, Scott, do you think that Ferrari needs to bite the bullet and accept that it's in Formula One's interests to be public about this? Or do you think that the contents of that agreement are so potentially controversial that they want to keep it as quiet as possible?
Well, I think the problem there is that the answer lies in exactly what has made this agreement confidential and what the detail that we don't know. That's what's particularly interesting. I mean, I would say that from the very start of this, Ferrari's been adamant that it's been transparent through the whole process. Their position at the end of last year was very much that they were the most tested team in Formula One, that they were subjected to even more tests once the allegations and the scrutiny started, that they always complied with these checks. And their key point was at the end of last year that had there been any wrongdoing, Mattia Binotto was adamant it would have came up in the very first test. Now, obviously, that clashes with what the FIA has said about it being a long-running analysis and so complicated that they can't actually come to what was the word, unequivocal evidence, wasn't it, about any potential wrongdoing. You can argue that Ferrari could just step forward and say, well, look, if you've got nothing to hide, then why not just let them disclose everything? But I think the problem there will be is that Ferrari obviously contests what the FIA is even alluding to in its statement, as Mark said. The suggestion that all was not well, but we couldn't prove it from the FIA does lend some kind of assertion to what Ferrari may or may not have been doing. Ferrari won't like that, but they might well see it as being far too drawn out and messy just to let anything more in public. As it stands, has Ferrari lost anything with the settlement being the way it is? I'm sure they would absolutely love it if the FIA would come out and completely exonerate them of any wrongdoing. But as it stands, 2019 is in the history books. They were second in the Constructors' Championship. They didn't win the title, so they'll argue of, well, you know, what's the point of dwelling on 2019 anymore? Changes have been made to 2020. If that's what you think Ferrari was doing, you've put stuff in place to stop them from doing it in the future. So I can't really see any incentive on Ferrari's part to get any more involved with this. I wonder if they're, as much as the FIA, hoping that this is the matter with a line drawn under it now.
Well, it's described as a dissuasive settlement, so the implication of that is that if there was something being done, it's no longer being done. But was there something being done? We don't really know. The FIA has only said they suspected it, and we should stress that the Ferrari has not been found guilty of anything at this stage. But Mark Hughes, what happens next? There's question marks over the transparency of this process with the FIA. If you're a rival team, if you're Red Bull, you might be thinking, well, should we have been second in the Constructors' Championship? There's big financial implications to that. So there's more to come in this, isn't there?
Yeah, there is. And Red Bull's stance has been particularly aggressive, even more so than Mercedes. So we've got Helmut Marko saying how many millions of pounds this has potentially cost them in prize money. So I don't think they're going to go quietly for the sake of unity and lack of controversy. I don't get the sense that they're going to just lie down and take it. So yeah, there's more to come, I feel.
What will be interesting to see is if the teams opt to pursue it further. If you remember in that initial statement that they sent out as the 7 non-Ferrari teams, they reserve the right to take it further, either through a civil court or through the FIA's means. So that, if they go down that route, that means they either consider it worthwhile investing the sort of resource that the FIA felt it either couldn't or wouldn't necessarily be worthwhile to get to a better conclusion that it was already at, or for whatever reason feel that there is stronger evidence than the FIA believes it has. So whatever way, whether it's financial or the extent of the evidence involved, if the teams do decide to take it further, that's going to be the key question, because I don't think they're going to let it lie. As Mark said, this definitely won't be the end of it, but it's going to take the teams, or one of the teams like Red Bull, to actually be convinced that it is worth spending that sort of money, because that was ultimately why the FAA dropped it. They say it's because they didn't feel that they could have got a better conclusion for the amount of effort that would go into it. If the teams feel differently, then that opens it all up again, and then who knows where it lands.
Well, as we say, there's more to come on this. Exactly when that will be, we don't know, with Formula One effectively on hiatus until the coronavirus situation is under control. We'd like to hear what you think about this, so let us know in the comments. Head to therace.com and don't forget the hyphen for all the latest on this situation as it evolves. And please do subscribe to our channel and like this video.